Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S. Another video. I put the right title in, but welcome to the third and penultimate part of the the case for reparations or for and against or whatever. But I suppose I'm making the case for search, but trying to ignore the case against search as well. So both sides of the story. But obviously, I'm on. Well, I say obviously, I'm on the side of pro reparations and that kind of thing. But I suppose it's interesting. I think I don't know if you'd agree with me, but to have a debate on the pros and cons of search and the practicalities of search, like how would search work and that kind of thing, which I think I discussed. Well, I mean, I did discuss, but I think I covered in good detail in part two. But obviously, you can agree or disagree as ever. I'm just a stupid guy with crazy opinions, but or whatever, and mad ideas. But anyway, yeah, I'd love to read from your ideas and thoughts on such and whatever. But yeah, it's something I wanted to discuss today because it's the 26th, and I think of the number 26 as being like reparations and that kind of thing, and more on like punishments for wrongdoing and reparations, but on the 27th, which is tomorrow, or number 27 normally, and tomorrow being the 27th, I think of reward, and maybe I'll talk about more hopefully about rewards, who deserves rewards, perhaps, and why as much as possible. But anyway, on to today's video and the rest of today's video. And I know that I mean, I haven't planned this out as well as planned, admittedly. Don't know if you can tell. Anyway, here goes. These are points number 21 to 30 as per usual. For those who might be new, I make these four part this videos, and I cover 10 ideas or thoughts or whatever in each video. So sorry for people who've already seen my videos, but anyone who's new, yeah, please let me know what you think as ever. So number 21, I suppose I'll say, like as I normally say, 21 again. Thinking about the past, I think it'd be good to learn about what's happened in history. And some people might say it's even just an acknowledgement of bad things that people did to others. It might not necessarily even be about the money or reparations or whatever necessarily for some people, and some people it is about money or whatever. But I do think if people have done wrong, they pay for it. But I suppose the argument against that is like, how do you pay for it? Like, if it came from the taxpayers, what about those who might not have benefited from it? What about like white people who haven't benefited from such or whatever? But I know, I mean, to be fair, living in Western society, we probably benefited from it in some way, whatever colour we are, like including ones like me. We probably wouldn't be able to afford things like healthcare, education, welfare, and things like that to the same level without that sort of thing. But as I said before, like, I guess to say we don't know the exact amounts or whatever, or you can't make up for the past or whatever it might be. I mean, at least you can learn from it. But I talked before, again, talking about 21 again, recapping something I mentioned before. If you steal from a shop or do something wrong and you have to pay for it, if you went to court, I don't know if it would stand up if you said, oh, because you don't know the exact amount or whatever, or you can't pay in a certain amount of time that you shouldn't pay. Like, I suppose that someone who does struggle to pay, you might give them a bit more time to pay, especially if you're going to be fair about it. I remember once, give me a personal example, I was in unfortunately, I'm very clumsy with my dyspraxia, I guess, and I'm a terrible parker, which is the main reason why I gave up driving, to be honest with you. But I really struggled to park, rather embarrassing. But I bumped into someone when I was parking. It was actually a friend of mine from football, but sort of fell out over it. But in court, they sort of said that they took us to court in the end, and they took me to court in the end, and I had to pay a certain amount. But they said, obviously, you can't pay it all together. But if you have a higher income, you can pay it quicker. But if it was things like, if someone owed me money and I saw that they were spending money on guns, knives, drugs, drink, alcohol, cars, or whatever else, I would say, oh, you owe me this money. If I had the spine to say it, I'd say, you owe this money and you're taking the mic out, Nick, in my case. But so yeah, I think like if Britain, America, or a place like that say, we can't afford reparations or whatever, you say, oh, you spend a huge amount on militarism, which is, as I said before, like the very thing that was used in many cases, or scientific experiments and things like that as well, and whatever. But the militaries were used to do these sort of things, which is one of the reasons why I believe POC, like black people, shouldn't join the military, in my opinion. I love for dyslexics. I wish to God dyslexics and black people wouldn't join the military, as well as other POC and learning disabled people. But yeah, I talked before, again, talking about 21 again. I'm going to try and move on to point number 22 because I realise I've probably over-explained this. But looking back at history and learning lessons at least, but I do think that there should be a monetary amount, but that could be paid through. I'd love for black people to be tax exempt, similar to dyslexics, actually, to be fair. Again, as I mentioned before. I was going to say side note, but anyway. Of course, they stopped saying whatever thoughts come to mind, I guess. But yeah, also tax incentives for investing in the black community and things like that. Anyway, moving on, number 22. And I suppose if reparations were paid to a black leader, let's say, who invested in the black community and all that kind of thing, if they got billions in reparations or whatever it might be, I don't know if it's trillions, but let's say if it was, I don't know. But I talked about before, Lenny Henry apparently said, I hope I said the right name because sometimes my brain doesn't work, but Lenny Henry, a comedian or former comedian or whatever, some say he was trying to peddle his book or whatever, but he said about 18 trillion. I don't know where that figure comes from, but fair enough, whatever number that would be, the fairest amount. I guess we can move on to the future, perhaps. Although I know, unfortunately, racism and that kind of thing, and prejudice and hate exists anyway, and unfortunately, I don't see any time where they'd get rid of it. I said before, it'd be boring if we were all the same, maybe even if we were nice to each other all the time, as nice as it might sound. But just like sometimes I think, like, if life was easy, I'd love to be able to find. One of my dreams is to be able to find an easy way, or preferably even easy ways in the plural, to make money. People say it's got to be hard and all that kind of thing. And I love the irony and the contrarian thinking, I guess, as much as anything else. Like I was thinking, if I wrote a book, bit of a side note, and I'm talking a bit about myself here, but if I wrote a book, and I know I'm trying to stay on topic, but if I wrote a book and I actually enjoyed writing that book, but that book sold all over the world and made me lots of money, nowadays I'd give it away, but, most of it, but I'd take what I need to live on and then give the rest away. Some of it to selfish stuff, but some of it not so. But nice life story, as I say. But I love the irony of actually saying that. Actually, I enjoyed writing that book, and I still make money from it. I imagine how great and cool that would be. Dare I say, sexy, if I can use that term, sexy that is. But yeah, people say like, oh, you've got to study hard and do things you don't like, and work hard and do jobs you don't like, and things like that. But what if there's a different path where you can actually enjoy it and make money at the same time? Sounds pretty cool to me. But I'm going to move on to number 23. As I say, I think it would be good to help poorer people and that kind of thing. And I think if the black community got reparations, it'd be good, as I say, if they had a community leader who could be appointed those funds and invest into black-owned businesses. Again, there could be banks and other businesses and investors being encouraged. As a libertarian, I won't want this to be forced necessarily. As much as possible, I want it to be encouraged. But yeah, to encourage to invest into and support the black community in Britain and around the world. And talking about being a libertarian and that kind of thing, but I was saying like taxes. If taxes, if people are going to be taxed, in an ideal world for me, there wouldn't be taxes. People would be able to choose what they do with their money and their body and their life as much as possible. And taxes are a violation of that to me. Like, enforced taxation is robbery to me, and it's also a massive violation of freedom, and it's a dictatorship, really, telling you what to do with your life. I read something once, a sort of libertarian meme, where it said, or well, information, but probably in a meme format. I think you can class it as a meme. I think it was intended as a meme or whatever, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it said, in a free society, if someone has 2 or more bikes or cars or whatever, I think they use the example of bicycle or whatever, you get to keep it if you want, or they get to keep it. But in a democracy, if 2 or more people, or if more people outvote you, they get to take your bike off you. And I suppose that applies to things like taxes and laws that govern like land ownership or all sorts of things like that. So, what was my point? Yeah, I think people should be able to keep more of their own money. And I'd love for dyslexic and black people to be tax exempt, as I talked about first. And I'd love for people generally to pay the lowest amount of taxes possible, whatever their background, but especially POC, people of colour, including black people, and also dyslexic and other learning disabled. Maybe the black community can network with Asians and other minorities, POC and whatnot, to talk about lobbying for tax cuts for themselves, tax exemptions even for Asian businesses and POC generally, and I'm focusing on say on the black community more. But they could look at what they have in common, how they were colonized, and that kind of thing. I think a lot of people don't realize that Indians were taken as an indentured labor to South Africa and the Caribbean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, if it wasn't slavery, at least it was servitude. So, black and Asians have more in common than they perhaps think sometimes. But yeah, I suppose some might say that if you gave money and the taxpayer was forced to pay money towards for reparations, what if it only went into the hands of a few? But again, maybe they could network together and make sure it goes to some of the poorest members of the black community in this case in Britain, or blackish ones. I'm focusing on black community. Similar for the Irish community as well. Though. At different times, I might think of Irish people who were enslaved. Yeah, just because it's difficult, perhaps some might argue it shouldn't be done. But yeah, tax cuts could be an example, tax exemptions, even tax incentives for investing. And I'd rather see, I think the point I was going to mention, I went off on one, to be fair, but the point I was going to mention is like how if people are going to be taxed, which I'd rather people are not going to be taxed, but I can't see any way they're going to scrap tax, but if people are going to be taxed, all the money the government spends on wars, weapons trade and things like that, as an anti-imperialist, I'd rather see that being given to the less fortunate. And I think like if you're on benefits, people have a go at you for being on benefits, but then the royal family get money from the taxpayer. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very anti-royalist. I'm very pro-republics. I love to support republic countries. I think it's unfair that one family gets so much money out of tax. Like if other people did it, they'd be called scroungers or whatever and all that kind of stuff. And part of me, if I could, I'd love to give the houses and the rooms, the spare rooms that the royals have, to homeless people. And I wouldn't want that to be for rich people like Richard Branson or Peter Jones or Theo Fetus or Duncan Valentine or people like Bill Gates, who talk about internationally. They've earned their money through endeavours like running a business. They don't get taxpayer subsidies, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I'd love to. If I could, I'd give like a room each from Buckingham Palace. I'd make sure the royal family had to house homeless people and things like that, and whatever residence they have, because they get taxpayers' money and that kind of thing. They've had that money, in my opinion, through ill-gotten gains, in my opinion. As a Republican, again, these videos are about my opinion, but on that note, I'm going to move on to number 24. I've said before, like how maybe black people could reparate themselves, so to speak. I know it's not quite the same, but they could invest in their own community, support each other, network together, learn from each other, teach each other what they know, pass on what facts, stats, figures, and general info and knowledge that they have, whether that's in tech, STEM generally, or whatever other areas, and support each other in that way. Celebrate black success stories and things like that. I suppose black history is a kind of form for reparations, perhaps, by acknowledging the achievements, accomplishments, and whatever the difference is, and the ambitions of black people, and support black people on social media or whatever, depending on how you use the Black History Month. If you don't just talk about the past, but maybe past achievements rather than just the negative stuff like slavery or whatever. But moving on, number 25, as I say, as a Republican, I would love to support republics. Number 26, as an anti-imperialist, I'd love to support anti-imperialism. And I thought of this recently when I saw a video about this woman who was arguing with her husband and kids about being kicked out of her house for whatever reason, and I don't know the full backstory. But it made me think of trying to know the full story first, but also mainly about like when people say respect your elders. That's my least favourite saying, and that's a bit of a side note again, but there's a point to this, please bear with me. But yeah, I think you should treat people, and I really want to talk more about this tomorrow, really, but as it's the 27th, like rewards. But I think as I say punishments on the 26th. Like if I could, in my diary, I would love to. If I was more organised, I'd love to write every bad thing anyone's ever done against me and like punish respectfully. I suppose in Christianity it says for vengeance is God's or whatever. But yeah, I'm not above vengeance. But if I could, I wish I could treat everyone slightly better than they treat me. But I'm a bit spineless sometimes anyway. So, but yeah, I wish to God would treat everyone slightly better than they treat me. I guess only just slightly. So if they treat me badly, hopefully they treat me almost as bad, but not quite as bad. And if they treat me well, hopefully I'll reward them, but even more, slightly more than they did for me. But, so yeah, if people take my food, I wish God would take food from them. And if people gave me food, I wish God would feed them. And I suppose it's the same for POC and black community or whatever, or people generally even, and even animals and whatever. What people do to others, to other people, and to animals and whatever, I dream would happen to them. So I think there should be recompense and compensation, but cause and effect, cause its reactions. But again, I'd love to know what you think. Hopefully, it won't be too harsh. But yeah, I think instead of respect your elders, I think it should be if you respect me, I'll respect you. I don't want to respect someone just because they're 92. I might accept that they're probably going to have frailties and not be able to do as much. And if they do, it's really impressive. But I don't want to respect you just because your parents gave birth to you before me or whatever. Like if I think of extreme examples, like would I respect someone if they were a child abuser just because they're 99? Not really. They're still a bad person. If people break the law or they haven't really done much for charity or they haven't done much in their life to help others, I don't respect you just because you're older than me, supposedly wiser or whatever. And if anything, I'd probably discriminate in the other way around. I'd probably support young people the most to sort of compensate and redress amounts. And also I think like older people have sort of had our lives, including myself in that because I'm quite old myself. And younger people I think should be given opportunities that people like me had when I was younger, to be fair. But yeah, I was thinking like, say for instance, if my parents kicked me out of my house and then I managed to change my situation, like someone came along and helped me and gave me training and I managed to get a career and then get a house, and then someone says, oh, now your parents are homeless. I'm like, that's their problem because they didn't help me. Whereas if my mum puts a roof on my head, which she has done, God bless her, I hope to always return the favour if I'm able to do so. Yeah, if I could, I'd return the favour for everyone. And I wish to God would do that on my behalf because I'm too weak to do it. But yeah, either way, as I say, I wish to God people would be treated. I wish to God would treat people slightly better. I was going to say than I treat myself, slightly better than they treat me. Sorry. But yeah, going to another point I just thought about as well, like on the Celtic, I talked about Celtic's games and how we lost 3-1 and Rangers won 3-1. That's really disappointing. I'm even more disappointed because we've been struggling anyway in the league this season compared to our usual level, and we're 8 points behind Hearts. And the other thing is, I was thinking it would have been a victory for imperialism, anti-imperialism rather, the other way around. So yeah, I'm disappointed about it on the 26th. Celtic lost 3-1 and Rangers won 3-1. But anyway, hopefully it will be better soon. Who knows? At the moment, so Celtic's got to get their act together. I think we've got to forget about Europe and all that kind of thing. But sorry for those who are not into soccer or whatever. But moving on, number 27. As I say, I wish God don't. I'm going to say like for Black History Month, for maybe even Dyslexia Awareness Month and Black History Month. And I suppose a bit biased of me in favour of these groups, especially being slightly dyslexic myself. But I wish God would, even though I'm not hugely religious, if I'm honest, but maybe God could win me over and say like, I wish God would prove his existence or her existence by not threats or intimidation or punishments, but through support for my ideas, my writings and videos and whatever. And also whatever people did to dyslexics and trickle black people, I wish would happen to them as well. So, but also even other people and animals generally as well. So whatever you do to other living things, I hope it happens to you. But with the black community, they could offer awards and rewards for supporting them. I know there's the Black Business Show, and they could acknowledge, like they could have a list of people who support them and sponsor them. A while ago, I used to stumble across like far right or whatever you call them, white supremacist websites. I don't really check their stuff anymore because I don't want to give them attention, or I don't want to put eyes on their website and give them more views and support or whatever. which I didn't intend to do before, but I didn't really think about that. And they listed their top sponsors, but maybe like those are companies that boycott them at the same time. Companies that support the black community and invest in the black community, they could reward them, and they could have like the Walk and Hall of Fame for companies that support the black communities. For instance, if Barclays give like £1 billion funding or whatever it might be to the black community, and let's say Lloyd's give 100 million, they could acknowledge and say that this company's given us this much, this bank's given us this much, and have a list of like a hierarchy of whichever investors, sponsors, politicians, councillors, bit of a dilemma with that one, as I say, as a libertarian. But yeah, whichever investors and all that kind of thing have invested the most in the black community in Britain or even overseas or around the world. Again, dyslexics could do similar. I hope in the future, I know that it's a bit of a dilemma. I was wondering whether to wear, I was thinking for these videos I should probably just wear my M.K.S cap rather than all the caps I normally wear. I normally wear a different one for each video nowadays, generally speaking, if I remember to do so or whatever. But I was thinking because it'd be more fitting, but I know I mentioned how Italian football can be very imperialistic and racist, but maybe as a reward, like for one thing, for me trying to support the black community, maybe they could give back by supporting Italian football and Celtic especially. But another thing is like maybe if Italians became less racist, then maybe black people could help Italians like practice football and not invest into and sponsor Italian football. But maybe a naive idea of mine, but maybe a pipe dream. I thought I'd share it anyway, as usual. But moving on, again, offering rewards for supporting the black community. Again, they can have a list of the top, a tier list or whatever you want to call it, of the top. So it could say this company or this bank, this is the bank that invests the most in the black community or helps the black community the most. And then it could be a top 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 or whatever it might be. I suppose it's not that many banks, I guess. But and this is a business. These are the businesses that invest the most in the black community. That's in Britain or again wherever else, similar for parts of Africa or whatever. So yeah, they could say this is like say Nigeria. They could say or South Africa or whatever, Central Africa even. They could say this is a bank that helps projects in South Africa the most or whatever, supports South African entrepreneurs, startups or whatever, SMEs or whatever the most, and that kind of thing. Number 28. I hope that it can turn negatives into positives and that kind of thing. I suppose if as I say, if reparations were given, then perhaps it could be closure. Again, I know that wouldn't necessarily get rid of racism. In fact, to be fair and to be honest, I suppose that could mean people could be even more racist in some ways, especially jealousy creeps in. Like apparently in Black Wall Street in America, it was probably jealousy that made they burnt the place to the ground and stuff like that. So I suppose people have to be careful of that. But if just money was just given to the black community, say, oh, we're going to invest in the poorest areas of the black community, then people might say, oh, they just want handouts, they're lazy, they want things for free, they're entitled or whatever. Whereas if you could say, oh, actually, this happened at a certain point in history and it's reparations, it's repairing. I don't know if that's where the word reparations come from, but it's probably no coincidence that it sounds similar to repair, where they're repairing something that was done in history. So it's not just given money for the sake of it. But again, some racists are going to be racist, haters are going to be haters, I guess, sometimes. And it's their choice. I don't want to force anyone to like anyone. It's up to them, really. Unless they take action and hurt people or whatever, use violence and things like that. And on that note, I think as well, like, I think black people shouldn't join the military and POC and instead should support minority-owned communities, like black communities, and try to monitor potential threats. So if you see someone, if people monitor minority areas, they can say, oh, yeah, this person's going to cause us trouble, or this person trying to plant a bomb in a place, or trying to shoot people, or trying to do whatever, and hopefully prevent it from happening, especially like, even online with cyber security and things like that. If that makes sense. And number 29, I love to see like mixed race and other minority communities support the black community, Black History Month at least every October, preferably. And I know I talk about projects I hope to have with like multiculturalism and dyslexia as well, black and dyslexic and that kind of thing, and how dyslexia affects people of different races and ethnicities and that kind of thing as well. And number 30, I was going to label this video like post it as over 18s only, just for this point. I'm missing it, 31, that rhymes with 30 towards the end of the video as well. So I say like, I wish dyslexic and triple black people would get sympathy sex, free shags, free sex, free shags, and that kind of thing. I'm going on alliteration because they start with S, but yeah, like I thought storylines, like if I could, I'd make, I say adult movies if I could, wish to God I could. I wish God would let me do that. But I thought of a lot of storylines like that. Right, notes on that kind of thing and imaginations. But yeah, like so, special ed teacher, schooling their dyslexic students or whatever, to give them more confidence, or even someone saying like, "Sorry, I didn't believe you." Like they didn't believe they have dyslexia, and they're like, "Sorry, I didn't believe you have dyslexia." And then if they're a hot teacher, they school them, or whatever, or they say, "You can school my wife," or whatever. They cook off. They become cooks or whatever, that kind of thing. If you know what that is. And like a black guy told to go back to his own country, and then women say, "Oh, sorry, you were treated that way," and then simply sex, that kind of thing. But on that bombshell, I'm out. Peace and love.